Hello, world. Welcome back to another episode of Working Wisely with me, Jesse Van Maurik. I'm very excited to introduce our next guest. She has written for publications such as the Huffington Post, Entrepreneur Magazine, Indian Express, and News Corp India. Her name is Diksha Dutta, and her story is how a great career in journalism suddenly becomes a great career in the world of tech and structuring teams. Having worked as a journalist for a very long time, particularly a business journalist, she's seen how many companies run and how many CEOs lead their companies. And for that very reason, Diksha has a lot to say in terms of what great leadership looks like, what a good team looks like, and what it means to work at a company without fear. On that note, here's our conversation. Hello, Diksha.
Yes, Jesse.
Thank you for joining me this Monday evening.
Thank you for inviting me and giving a good start to the week on a Monday.
So how's your work week materializing so far? Are you looking forward to your week? Are you excited? Are you anxious? Are you everything? What is going on in Diksha's mind?
Well, I'm usually everything, always, every week.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
That sounds like quite a lot.
That sounds like a lot, yes, because I think like as a person who works independently, you don't know what's coming next. And especially someone like me who works with a lot of fast-paced companies. So I would say it's usually exciting. Like that's the theme that follows throughout the week.
Yeah. So basically the excitement of setting your own structure, if I can say that.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's pretty much the foundation of how I work and one of the most challenging things rather.
Yeah, I think so. So I want to start with, you started off as a journalist in India, and now you're helping startups in Berlin with various things. Can you describe to me just roughly how you chose to move from India to Berlin and the career choice that came along with that? Can you tell me more about how that came to be?
Okay, cool. I mean, that's a long story, but
we got time.
We got time. Okay. So I think like I wouldn't say that there's any kind of very direct connection between my journalism career and what I'm doing in Berlin right now, but the narrative still has a lot of like cross connections rather.
Okay.
So Berlin's decision was like almost an overnight decision to come to Berlin because I met one of the startups when I was in India and they were looking for somebody who can help them with a small project. And that's how I ended up being here. But then one story led to another and I never went back. Having said that, I have been working with a lot of startups in Berlin when I was in India. So there was a company which was trying to, it was like a platform for Indian and German startups to work together.
What was it called?
It's called Wonder Nova.
Wonder Nova?
Wonder Nova, yes.
Cool
Actually,
name.
it's by a very dear friend of mine. She is a German, but she is actually I always get confused because she calls herself like an Indiaholic. She is German.
An Indiaholic who is German.
Yes. And
kind of an interesting phrase.
Yeah. And she is Italian born. And she spends 5 months in India every year. I mean, at that time she used to when I met her.
So she's addicted to being in India, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, she's very believes like really in what the future of Asia and, what Asia is going to bring to the entire world. And she's very connected. And she actually handles the money of one of the biggest family offices in India. Okay. And that's how we met. And she was pretty much my connection to the Berlin startup scene. And also the German-Indian startup exchange program, which is funded by the governments, both the Indian and the German government. And so that was pretty much my entry point to understanding what's happening in Berlin, that, this is a place in Europe where a lot of startup activity is happening. And in one of the common events where all these people were, some of my friends and a few Berlin startups as well, I ended up meeting a startup from Berlin, and that's how I came here.
So I'd like to ask you a couple questions also really quick about some of the things you really like about the Berlin startup scene and how startups are uniquely good in Europe and in Germany, where we currently are.
Okay, so I think Berlin is probably the next, or no, it's actually the present hotbed for startups in Europe. And there are a number of reasons to it. First of all, integration is super easy in Berlin if you're attracting talent. Like to attract, like everybody speaks about immigration in Germany and
Yes.
Berlin, how it's so easy. And I think that's been the biggest plus for startups, that they have been able to attract a lot of talent in the country. So that's a big plus. Then the cost of living, which I feel that startups struggle a lot when they are scaling up in terms of, like managing talent, the cost of infrastructure, etc. So Berlin solves that. And apart from that, I think in terms of general quality of life and the support from the government.
One thing I've really appreciated about working in Germany, even though, I'm from Portland, Oregon, love that, love where I'm from, is that Germans and German institutions do take a pretty holistic approach on a lot of things, and there does seem to be more public-private partnership as a result of that. Mm-hmm. And there does seem to be more of an atmosphere of people wanting to do civic good in Berlin than I've seen in other places. Doesn't mean that there aren't people that want to do good things lots of other places, mm-hmm. but I think that there seems to be a unique status of making a positive sort of macro impact with your organization in Berlin that I see less often in other places.
Yeah, that's a very fair point, actually. Yes, we do see more socially conscious startups in the city.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that if you streamline someone's software needs or deliver things with drones that you're not doing a good for the world. But I mean, it does seem like at least. I don't know how often it becomes reality, but it seems like the ambition to do civic good is very high here compared to a lot of other spots I've traveled around.
Yes. Good point, Jesse.
Well, thank you. What else is good about the Berlin startup ecosystem for you?
I think it's also the supporting factors in terms of the support public gives, like the government gives. So there's a body called the Berlin Partners, which has dedicated itself for strategic partnerships with startups and does help a lot of foreign talent to come into the country. And their mission is actually to support the Berlin startup scene. And also the Senate has a separate, department working on this. And a lot of independent bodies, I think. Silicon Alley is there. A lot of co-working spaces are there. You also have Techstars in Berlin. And, a lot of good startups come out of Techstars. So, I mean, it's pretty much getting the hub of the next big startups.
Yeah, and you're saying just as you've said about good company culture, it seems like good city culture, if you want to attract startups, is somewhat similar,
Yes, absolutely.
Do things that make people want to participate in something and be in it. Tell us the name of the organization that you're at.
Yeah, so I work with startups on, at different levels. So I'm with the German-Indian Startup Exchange Program. It's called GINSEP. And
GenSep, okay.
Yes, GenSep, yes. They facilitate pretty much, how German startups can help Indian startups and Indian startups can help German startups and how they can really collaborate. So that's why that's why I know so much about immigration laws, etc. And then I'm also with the Startup Bootcamp in Berlin, which is for startups in the healthcare sector. So I'm a mentor with them. And that's why I know like a lot of ideas come from the city, and also a lot of people from other European countries want to come here and start up as compared to their own country, because I mean, of course, they do feel that this is a more startup friendly environment.
Yeah, and Germany is the biggest market in Europe, right? So those people got a lot of money.
Yeah.
These are good things. But yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. And, it's interesting. It's interesting to hear. It's always interesting to hear about different people say what they think the strength of a place that they move to is.
Yes, yes.
Okay, amazing. What do you think it is about Berlin where all these startups showed up overnight? What do you see about the place that attracts people who want to start companies, often in a tech setting?
I mean, well, that's something I'm still figuring out.
Aren't we all?
So I really don't think I have an answer to that. Because from the startup scene that I know, Berlin is very different.
What makes it different? Is it a positive difference or is it a negative difference?
It's both. I mean, there can't be like I don't have a straight answer to whether it's a positive or a negative difference. It's both. Because when I came, it was, I really couldn't understand the structure of startups here, because the way Indian startups work is very similar to what you would find in the Silicon Valley culture. And that's, again, a lot of startups that I had been in touch with.
That makes sense too, because a lot of Indian people came to Silicon Valley and helped build those startups.
Yes,
so it would make sense that those cultures are more aligned.
Yeah. So actually the biggest difference is the work culture. So it has its pros and cons,
Let's lay them out.
Yeah, I think first is clearly in terms of maybe say over aspirational or unrealistic planning in organizations.
Yeah. Where would that be, in India?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or in Berlin.
No, that's in India.
So overly fantastical ideas in Silicon Valley and in India.
Yeah, I think you end up planning way ahead of where the resources of the company can actually take you.
Okay.
And you have a big vision, and everybody is driven to work towards that. And it has its own cons, because at times you're not very realistic in terms of what can be achieved, and you're not that structured. You don't realize that there is a structure, and then you get disappointed a lot more.
Okay. Do you think, for example, that people in Silicon Valley or India are doing that because they truly have a distorted, grandiose vision? Or do you think there's just a branding pressure and an image pressure and a hype pressure that incentivizes that kind of talking up that then kind of falls back to earth when reality collides?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So simply put, do you think that people are, do you think those startups that are in Silicon Valley and India are overstating their ambitions deliberately in order to get funding or attention? Or do you think they really are delusional in many cases?
Oh, there's a simple answer to that. For a country like India, it's like population. That's
population.
Population, yes. The mere number of people you have in the country. So it ends up becoming very competitive for the startup scene. And 2015 was a time when all the US funds were looking at India. And it was the peak for startups. And everybody was getting money. So it made the market super competitive, very competitive. And when there's a lot of competition, you end up pushing yourself.
Gold rush thinking.
Yes, absolutely. So, if employees in my organization are not putting 80 hours a week and somebody else is putting 80 hours a week, that they're bound to grow faster than me. But anyway, we'll come back to that again, which again a myth that was broken when I came to Berlin, and I realized that probably that's not the ideal way to work. But I pretty much came from a culture where you really, really grind yourself morning to evening, and if you're not doing that, you're not working hard enough and you're not loyal enough to your company. And
okay,
yeah, so it's I think that was one of the biggest differences that I saw in the way people work here. But I realized that so I can talk more in depth about it.
Yeah, we're happy to be in Europe where there's vacation days and and different work weeks perhaps than what's the norm in some parts of Asia. But it's interesting the way you describe it, as in the competition for money made people feel like they needed to work that long. So in that, is there an implication that the 80 hours was more of an arbitrary measure than it was something that was really getting results?
Well, yes and no. We do have statistics that Usually it's always 20% people in the company. And what's the exact statistic? I don't know, but there's this thing that is always quoted, right? Like it's like always the 20% people in the company that end up doing 80% of the work. Or
oh yes, I forget the name of that law, but there's something about as you add more people to your organization, you have there are exponentially fewer people who are doing a larger percentage of the work.
Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't really mean that if you're spending 80 hours, you are doing more work, but it's just something that you end up doing because that's what you feel is right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you're saying in Berlin that is not the case.
I mean, no, I think some startups do that.
Definitely.
Definitely. I've met, but I wouldn't say that is something that is common in the startup scene, which is a good thing because I do feel that you end up being more productive if you're working lesser number of hours.
Yeah.
I feel that with myself at least. Like, also, I don't know, maybe it's age or something, but I think in mid-20s I was working like a lot more in terms of hours. And now, I do feel that if I put like concentrated 8 to 9 hours a day, I'm done by that, like, and I'm more productive the next day.
And I think there's a case to be made that, and we've said it in other podcasts before, that decision making and labor sometimes don't have the same demands on a person's time. So, for example, you can make the wrong decision about what direction to go in as a company because everybody's maxed out. And then if you're going in the wrong direction, it doesn't really matter if everybody's working 80 hours a week. If they're working on the wrong thing, right?
Okay. Yeah. Also, like I think 80 is an exaggeration, maybe 60. Yeah.
Well, depends who you talk to. And there's also all those people who think, they count like networking and drinks in their 80 hours, right? So this is,
Well, technically it is work, isn't it? Because it's taking like so much of your energy. I do feel it is work. Like I do feel that is work.
Yeah, for your liver at least.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Okay, well let's take it back a little more to you. So then you said you were working crazy hours in India in journalism, correct?
Well, initially in journalism, yes, because when you're a cub reporter, is that a term used globally? Like being a cub reporter? I mean, we use it in India.
I unfortunately am a Philistine and can't confirm or nor deny the validity of that phrase.
But that's like super cute. So I was called a cub reporter.
A cub reporter?
Yeah.
Does that mean there's like a Papa Bear reporter?
Yeah, there is. So
They probably don't call it that.
No, they don't call it that.
Okay.
Yeah, but that would be cute too, So, I mean, so you're just like a cub assisting a senior person. And I mean, that's pretty much like when you start your journalism career, it's really hectic. It's really hectic and you get all the shitty work from transcribing.
Yeah, you get the bad
interviews.
stories, right?
Absolutely, all the time. And beats that nobody wants to do, sectors that nobody wants to cover. But I think once I really got into business, that was like, I was like, a fish in the pond. I mean, I really, really fish in the sea. What do you call it?
You were a big fish in a small pond. You found your niche.
No, I found my niche. Yes.
Okay, let's take the fish metaphor away.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, you found your niche in journalism. So business journalism was your interest.
Yes, I think interest. Well, of course, when you get out of journalism school, you do want to do a lot of other kind of journalism. But I think business journalism is something which I felt I was best at.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Why do you think you were best at business journalism as opposed to any other
crime?
Crime, the environment, who knows?
Yeah, but environment still collides with business, right?
Everything else. That's very true.
Yeah. So crime or civil or, something like that. I think like it's something that I was too emotionally attached to if I started covering stuff like that in a country like India.
I think that's a really interesting thing to say because normally, especially in like North America is probably the king of it. We often say like, follow your passion, do what you love, like you don't normally hear people in North America saying, oh, you seem pretty emotionally invested in this. Don't do it. So can you elaborate a little more?
Emotionally invested, yes, but emotionally affected, no.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, so invested versus invested. Yeah.
Affected, yeah. So I mean, it's not something that it should affect your everyday life, and I feel that the way crime is covered by media houses, globally as well, from what I hear from my friends, everywhere, and in countries like India as well, is something that I couldn't really relate to as a journalist.
Was it sensationalist?
Of course it is, yes. I mean, we all know that, like, everybody wants to read certain kind of news, and there has been so many studies regarding that, people really enjoy reading negative news.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's you always have to make it sound like that. So, yeah, it's something that I couldn't relate to a lot. Business was something that I had studied. I understood companies well, and newspapers are always looking for people who have a little bit of background in balance sheets and numbers and understand annual reports, and that was an area I was very comfortable with, and I liked analyzing stuff. So that's how I got into business reporting.
Okay, and you also know if you're a business reporting journalist, you can go in and they can trust that you can articulate what they're communicating to you about what they're doing, if they're a business or
Yes.
Okay. Could I ask you then you started doing some coverage of German startups, right? And you were keeping track of these differences that we were discussing earlier, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, you decided to stay. Sounds like the decision to stay in Berlin wasn't made in India, but it was made in Berlin when you were already here.
Yes.
And at that point, you were still working as a journalist, right?
No. So my full-time journalism career ended in 2015.
2015. Okay.
Yes.
What different times, 2015. I don't think I even have to elaborate on all the ways we thought differently about the world in 2015.
So, yeah, that is when my journalism career, like full-time journalism career ended. And
so you stepped out after like clickbait was totally just taken off everywhere on a level no one's ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good time to quit. Actually, if you ask me, at least in India. I don't know, like, globally what you're referring to, but 2015, so I had already been in journalism for 6 years, and that was all print. No, it was 3 years News Corp India, actually. So
News Corp India.
Yes.
Yeah. So is that Rupert Murdoch's News Corp?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So they did have a lot of online publications, and one of them was VC Circle, which was covering, like, venture capital in India.
What was the tone of it? Like, what was sort of like their attitude?
Oh my God. It was absolutely writing about deals in the startup scene.
Deals?
Yes, like in terms of who X is investing in Y.
Okay.
So if you didn't get those kind of stories, you were not really a star reporter.
Hot investor gossip.
Yeah, and always, I think that's always been the case with business journalism. I mean, now, I don't know, like the trend of breaking stories is maybe not as sexy as it used to be, but if you really want to be a journalist who is known, you need to get like this information before anybody else.
Did you get any pressure from PR people from certain businesses to report things in a certain light?
Always.
I'm asking because we have a PR person from a startup coming on soon, and
always. I think that happens even now because I still
PR always happens.
Yeah. I still freelance for a lot of publications.
Mm-hmm.
And, that still happens.
Okay. And so then you made the switch. You felt like it was the right time. It sounds like sensationalism, among other things, was part of why you were kind of ready to leave journalism. What else maybe prompted you to leave journalism?
Well, I think it was like very straightforward in my case. First of all, the thing was that print was really dying. Like the future of print.
Yeah, I mean, there's a statistic in the U.S. that, local newspapers are dying faster than the bees. So, I mean, like, there's definitely that.
So print was dying, and I had already tried digital. So I didn't know, like, after 10 years, is this industry going to serve me? So one was like the practical reason. The second reason was that the kind of stories I was doing, I completely stopped enjoying breaking stories on funds investing in startups or somebody, a startup shutting down or somebody exiting a company or making money and, this kind of stuff. Like, it was not exciting me anymore. And it had been, 6-7 years of doing that already.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, what next? This is something I can do even if I'm not a full-time journalist. And I can do more meaningful journalism, more long-form journalism, which I do now. Like, I analyze companies more, more in depth, and it's not just about how much money they have raised. So I thought that this I can do even if I'm not employed with a news agency or a news company.
Because then you could focus on what you thought had more value?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So then that prompted some changes. And then what kinds of things do you like to focus on now that you're not bound into the hot deals of Indian investor capital?
Well, now definitely, you mean in terms of writing or in terms of all the things I do?
How about just the subjects for a start in terms of writing about things?
So I definitely still write a lot of company stories, but there's more freedom in terms of the companies I choose to write about. I mean, after coming to Berlin as well, I did a few company stories on Berlin. One of them was on Blinkist, and I think they were an interesting startup to write about. And yes, I'm very interested in how company cultures work. So that is something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Company cultures.
Company culture, yes. Because I think that's something, or leadership rather, in any organization. Mm-hmm. Because investors will tell you this, and founders will tell you this, and employees will tell you this, that it doesn't matter if you have all the funds you need, or you have the best business strategy, or you have everything, like the best team. But if you have bad leadership, your company will fail whatsoever.
Okay. I think that's a valid point. Yeah. And I think that, obviously, especially, in our current world, maybe you disagree, but I sometimes feel like there's a lot of CEO worship. As in, there's very high profile. Yeah. I think in the United States, maybe there is some sensationalism around large purchases that make the news, but I think there's also kind of cults of personality that emerge around certain successful people, and I think that can sometimes create not for everybody, but for many people, this kind of a sense that to be consequential is sometimes more venerated than like how you get there or what things are important to you, and I think that, so to use your example, it is interesting to kind of look into a company and what its culture is. And that's not really something that, has been talked about in the media until fairly recently. I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that, culture is still, culture is still something that people really don't understand, and it comes in a very materialistic package for most companies in terms of rituals and the things they should be having as a checklist.
Okay, and this is really good. So I want to ask you then, based on your observations of the companies you've written about, what do most companies get wrong about putting together a good culture?
I think the most important thing in any organization is that it should have the flexibility of, and I'm saying this out of experience because I've worked with some really, really good leaders, including this friend of mine that I'm talking about, Angela, who works with a lot of Indian and German startups. So I think the basic is that it should have the flexibility of any employee in the organization to be able to talk to the top, if so-called top, without hesitation, like in terms of approachability, which lacks in most organizations.
Okay, so the idea is make a hierarchy more flat, or if not totally flat, at least accessible, so you're getting feedback from people.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So, and why do you think that's a difficult thing for people to put together? Or what do you think if that's the best approach from your observations, why don't more companies do it if it's working so well and it's so much better?
Well, I think first, like the most important thing is that it's built over time. Like it can't really build, it can't be built overnight. It's like more an overtime process.
So you can't be like, we're doing this next week and then we're
Yeah,
done.
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it has to go across levels.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can only think of experiences, where where I worked and it was very difficult. Like, it was very easy. Sorry, not difficult. It was very easy to talk to people at the top.
What results did you see that made what's better? I mean, maybe everybody feels better about themselves, but did those companies succeed in other ways too? I mean, like
they do.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
absolutely.
Good.
Yes, I mean it's like I don't know if you've heard of this phrase, but it's like building fearless organizations.
Fearless organizations,
and it's there's a very good book on psychological safety, where it says that people should feel challenged in an organization, but they should never fear in an organization. So there should never be a fear to do a mistake, or fear to talk,
fear of offending someone.
Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, they should definitely feel very challenged every day they are coming to work.
Okay.
So, and how can this be built where people feel that they have access to everybody in the organization? I mean, I'm not saying like access in terms of course, if it's a company of 10,000 people, or if it's like Facebook, you can't have access to like Mark Zuckerberg as,
no.
Or maybe you can. I don't know how they work inside Facebook, but I'm sure that with all these these tools that are used in organizations these days, access has become much easier, but at the same time, access has become more difficult.
Yeah, as in you, just because everyone's in reach of each other doesn't mean that, there's also more demands on people's time, doesn't mean that they can answer everybody's calls.
Yes, absolutely. But there has to be some mechanism. I mean, I don't know, like, the voice to be heard, like the voice has to be heard. Maybe not, or even if it goes through hierarchy, it has to be heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think hierarchy maybe is to some degree inevitable because different people commit different amounts of time and resources to organizations and have different decision-making roles. But I think what's good about what you're saying is, if you are in a position at the top of a hierarchy or the middle of a hierarchy or the bottom of a hierarchy, there's damage that is done when you don't know what's going on outside of your link in the chain.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Because then it's hard to understand the direction of where things are going and where the cohesion is, right? Because all of these things, then, I think everybody knows what it's like to interact with a company where maybe you're a customer of theirs or something like that, but where you get the profound feeling the left arm doesn't know what the right arm is doing, Yeah. And that seems to be, to some degree, what you're saying. And I want to get to a point where we talk about some of the other things you're doing outside of journalism now. So since coming to Berlin, you've branched out quite a lot, and also a little bit before that. So what other fields did you branch out into, and how are they informed by your journalism?
Okay, sure. But I think I would also like to add a bit on the last thing that you just discussed.
Go for it.
I mean, I think there's always an example that I give companies is that imagine if as a CEO you're having a town hall with all your employees.
Okay, a town hall?
Yes. And if any of the employee is not able to speak their mind in that gathering, there is something wrong about your culture.
Yeah, that's fair. Because, as you said, this would be someone who would be fearful of speaking their mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So now to your question, to what are the other areas I've branched into. I think Berlin as a city has offered me a lot in terms of the things I'm really passionate about and the things I really wanted to do. And I think journalism spoils you
Journalism spoils you?
Yeah, it spoils you, absolutely. Because I don't know what other fellow journalists would say about journalism culture, media culture in media companies, but I think it's the best culture to work in.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that has to do with like the nature of journalistic work, or do you think it's just because certain kind of personality is drawn to journalism?
Both. It's both. Yeah. So first, basically, of course, it's the nature. It's high pressure every day. Right.
That doesn't always create a good environment, high pressure, does it? I mean, finance people are under
For
high
me-
pressure. Do they have as great a culture as journalists?
Yeah, but you do learn how to cope with it every day, right? So
Yeah, so maybe the form of your coping mechanism might be a means of
Yeah,
deciding the
absolutely.
culture, right?
so it's like nobody takes things to their heart. I mean, nobody gets offended easily because it's, at least in the newspaper I worked in.
Okay,
Yeah. I mean, I can just talk of my experiences.
certainly.
And I can't speak for the entire industry. But yes, but I think in newsrooms, you are working under so much stress every day that you know that your editor is in a bad mood because of something that has happened. And tomorrow is going to be a new day.
Okay.
And it has nothing personal because we are all working with this, for this newspaper that is going to come out tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And it has nothing to do with, like, of course there are power battles, but you know that your loyalty is with the story that's going.
Yeah, I think that's something that any organization can relate to, because I think there is this point with colleagues, and we have discussions about it at our company too, where you cross this bridge where you're comfortable enough with someone where you discover that like a frustration or something is not if someone's frustrated, the first instinct is not it's because of me, right? Which some people get when they first start working somewhere or something like that. But then as you work with people on more things and see them in tough situations, you're less inclined to feel personally wounded if someone's having a tough time, right?
Absolutely. Secondly, it made me like super open to criticism because you start your career, your stories are like rehashed and rewritten,
and you're working with bad material, right?
Yeah.
So even if you're a decent writer, your story's probably going to suck,
Yeah. I mean, for some people, you're
not
always
you,
gonna
of course.
suck.
I mean, I've read your things. Your things are very good. But I mean, obviously, there's a learning curve when you have to work with not the best story content because you're lower on the totem pole, and then someone is giving you advice on how to improve your stuff.
Yeah, but as a writer, you will always suck for some people. Like, your writing is always going to be bad for some people. So you accept that.
True.
And I think and that is something I apply in every job I do.
Someone's going to think it sucks.
Absolutely. And, there's something wrong if everybody thinks that you don't suck. Like, it's...
That's a great line. Can you just please say that one more time? Because I think it's worth saying again.
Yeah, I think that, like, there's something wrong if everybody thinks you're perfect. Because, like, no, that's not cool. Because what after that?
But I mean, isn't this the interesting part? Because I think doesn't the desire to be perfect also create the fear dynamic that you're personally saying is a big harm to a company? Is if people want to be perfect, they're afraid when they do make a mistake, which they will because they're a person, right?
Sorry, what is your question?
So my question, it wasn't a question, it was more of a point. But I mean, you were talking earlier about a fearful organization is a less effective organization.
Definitely.
And then and the expectation of perfection, I think, this seems to be a recipe for people being afraid to speak up about things.
Yeah, that's true.
What are we doing in terms of what we're working on now? What have you been working on beyond journalism?
Cool. So I think so the point I was making was that journalism spoiled me, but at the same time it taught me a lot of things and made me unemployable for certain kind of jobs.
Unemployable.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you have so much of your mind, you have a mind of your own and you want to work in a certain way and you can only work in organizations that are very open. So now
those are good values though, right? I mean, if you're going to become idiosyncratic over time because of your job, that's a good direction to go, right?
Yeah, that makes me feel good.
Well, yeah, because I really think that if you calcify as a result of aging, you might as well do it. Calcifying your ways, not physically, but what I mean to say is if you harden your expectations, if you're around people that thrive on criticism and teach you how to work in stressful environments, that's going to probably be a good thing in terms of informing your values, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, extending to what you said, now I do most things that I'm really, truly passionate about. I mean, writing and journalism will always be a part of me, no matter whatever I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it gifted me with the ability to actually understanding companies very well, not just from the external side, but also the internal side and internal, like how they work internally. And having interviewed so many CEOs in my career, I think leadership is something that I really wanted to understand at a deeper level. And in Berlin, I started working with a few companies for their company culture, how they communicate internally, how they look at some sensitive topics, how those topics can be, how they are also important business decisions, at the same time. How actually having a team that is healthy and happy and is going to affect your productivity and eventually revenues. And I can actually look at both the sides now, that is like completely number driven, and one that is completely dependent on emotional intelligence. And I look at combining these two sides for companies, and I do that through workshops which I offer them.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is something I started doing 2 years back in Berlin. I did do that in India. No, I think a year back in Berlin. I did that in India quite a bit, more so with university students. And yeah, so that's been something that has given me a lot of fulfillment and also given me the opportunity to actually combine my knowledge into absolutely different areas. That is like learning and development and business-driven, like fast-paced, decision-driven businesses.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a valuable point. I mean, every time you watch like an American movie about the Washington Post, you've always got somebody chain smoking and yelling, and there's this stressful environment, and the paper's got to get out, and there is a very huge overlap with people in tech where there's new integrations and interfaces and things to know about and crank out quickly, but you still have to keep the quality level strong. So there's a similar sense of urgency that I could totally see in terms of company dynamics. Being, a good comparison for small companies working in technology. Mm-hmm. So when you spoke to these CEOs, did you find that CEOs who were doing well had radically different ways of thinking, or did you find that the ones that were successful had a lot of things in common?
Okay, that's a good question. That's what you always say when you have to think about the answer a bit.
That's good. Think about the answer. Well, we got time.
Yeah. So similarities in people who are successful.
So you've probably interviewed. You've interviewed successful CEOs and unsuccessful CEOs, probably, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that the ones who are successful, just focusing on them for now, did they all have a similar type A personality and a $1 million smile, or were they all radically different in their perceptions of themselves and their company?
I think the most common thing in people who actually make it is that they always remember and admit the mistakes they have made in the past, or what went wrong, why, and they accept it and acknowledge it. Whereas there are some leaders who feel that those mistakes happened because of X, Y, Z, wrong timing, wrong hire, wrong fund supporting them, or etc., etc. But the people who actually, I feel, are able to move on to the next decision, like even after, and I don't really know what you mean by successful CEOs, because for me, a lot of people who have like failed a lot of times are also successful, and they really look at those failures with they own up to it.
That's a valid point. No, I mean, successful is I try to keep it open because I was curious what your answer would be about it. I didn't want to imply it was money or this or that. But no, that's a valid point. And then the ones who are less successful by whatever measure, I mean, do you see similar qualities in CEOs that maybe mislead?
Companies? Absolutely. I think most of the
those come quicker. That answer's definitely.
I mean, I can't take names, but
certainly
I can
not.
Definitely tell you that there are 3 to 4 companies that I studied quite deeply, and it's like over the course of 2-3 years. And it was absolutely because of bad leadership that the ship sunk.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because if people leave you, your co-founders leave you, nobody can work with you, you don't have answers for the fund. You are very intelligent, you know a lot, you're Harvard educated. I mean, whatever you need, whatever checklist is needed for you to be like the poster boy, the poster child of the startup scene. But if you cannot get along with people, you will not make it. And there are 3-4 cases in which I feel that these people were so damn good in knowledge, but they absolutely lacked working with different people. First, co-founder disputes, absolutely in all 3 cases. Second, company culture couldn't like retain employees for a longer time.
Okay.
And yeah, so these were the 2 things that, and yeah, third is of course like not owning up to their own behavioral mistakes, and rather it's always the CTO's fault, or it's always that they hired the wrong person, or it's always that something happened, or it was bad timing.
Yeah. I want to show you a statistic and tell me what you think of it and whether you think it's going to be good or bad for company culture. So, with the exception of I think the United States and I guess France, and I think it's still also true for the UK. Most industrialized countries in the next 15 to 20 years are going to deal with a working age population that is smaller than their current one.
Mm-hmm.
And
you mean younger?
Yeah, as in countries that have had fewer children, then in 20, 30 years time, we'll have fewer working age people as well, right? It's one way of predicting the future that we can always predict to be correct, because we'll know how many adults there are based on how many kids. There won't be more, right? And companies there won't be as many people to go around to work somewhere. It seems like a company would have to do more to convince someone, like supply and demand. They would have to do more to attract the employee, and the employee will have more leverage.
I mean, that's still happening, Jesse.
Yeah, it's already happening in the tech sector where there's already a labor shortage, right? I mean,
yeah, that's already happening. But does that mean offering a better culture? No, I don't think
that's my question to you.
No, not necessarily,
Do you think there's lots of cheap perks? Because I notice a lot of startups, they offer healthy snacks and this sort of stuff, or like a beanbag chair in the office, and these things get elevated.
Yes, they do. But they not necessarily mean good culture, and people are going to stick to you, because if somebody else offers this, they are going to go for this. So it again comes back to more real things that companies are offering, like real connections and real feel-good factor that, okay, I really want to go and work with these people.
Yeah, because I've spoken to a lot of people who've been at different companies, and sometimes, when the company is a little too proud of their ping pong table, people feel pandered to.
Absolutely. I don't think that can retain, like, really good talent, the talent you really actually want, because that talent is going to go if that is offered somewhere else.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, so when it comes to your workshops and the things that you've been doing with other companies, based on what you've learned from other companies as well, what's the first thing you tell people about company culture? What's the thing that you want people to know right off the bat?
I think, the first thing, again, like whenever I start my workshops, is that, I mean, I don't know how you're going to, like, come to work tomorrow, but at least today, this is a space where everybody is going to be able to talk about the things that they need to talk about. And I'm never the one giving advice in my workshops.
Okay.
Never. But it's more like I'm the person, because nobody knows the company better than the employees in the organization. And the biggest challenge is that those voices are not able to come out because of X, Y, Z reasons.
Okay.
And why you get a facilitator like me is that I'm able to make those voices heard that very day, and continue the momentum for the coming days, and which is, I think, the basis of a company culture.
Okay.
Yes.
That's very, very cool, and I think also very much ties well into journalism, and that you are you're there to find something out. You're not there to preach something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I know a lot of that has to do in your case with, diversity. And that's a huge part of company culture that's very important to you and to a lot of people and is growing in importance among companies. What do you say about diversity when you're doing your workshops?
Yeah, I think diversity and inclusivity, which is almost like, they're used together. The words used together often and I think that's the most misunderstood concept.
I think I'm inclined to agree.
Companies, yes. Because it comes to, so when you ask them, okay, how diverse you are, and they come with statistics in terms of men, women, genders, nationalities, people of color or whatsoever.
Yeah, everybody's seen the cliche corporate stock photo
absolutely.
of a black woman, a white guy, an Asian guy, an
absolutely.
Arab guy, and they're all smiling, pointing at the same computer,
And I think the very reason it comes to me, even though I don't seek a lot of work in conducting diversity workshops, because I don't think that's the basis of my workshops. I mean, my workshops are more about culture and communication, and rest everything is a subset of it.
Yeah.
The very reason that diversity comes to me is because they look at me and they feel, being a person of color, they feel that is something that I should be doing. But I never really feel that that's my primary identity as a coach or a facilitator.
No, certainly not.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wanted to make that point clear because, and that's why my frustration lies with people not understanding what diversity is. So, diversity for me is not just, it's, I think there are the tangible, there's a tangible side to diversity, what you can see, how people are different in a room. It's visible to your naked eye, that, okay, this is a diverse group. And then there are like non-tangible, side to diversity, which you really can't see, like in terms of political views, how people would think. Some people are very daring in an organization. Some people are not so daring. Some people some people always speak their mind. Some people take a lot of risks. Some people are shy. Some are that loyal. Some maybe are not that loyal. And, that is actually the real diversity what makes an organization diverse and taking brave decisions. Mm-hmm. So, and you should have these kind of people in the organization. And actually, there's a study by Harvard Business Review which says that, okay, sorry, I have to get back to you on this because I don't remember it by heart. But I think the very essence of that report was that it's not necessary. It is not necessary that if you have people from different nationalities in your team, it will necessarily lead to more diverse decisions.
Definitely not.
Yeah. But if you have people who are high on the non-tangible aspects of diversity,
like different personality,
in terms of how they think,
okay,
how they look at the world. I mean, there can be a person from minority, but not being very pro-minority.
So let's pick that apart a bit because that's a valuable point. I mean, do you see examples where people take some forms of diversity into account, but not others?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time because still you have to. I mean, but that is okay. I don't think there's a problem with that because. I mean, we've had a lot of discussion about quotas, but I think that any person who joins a company should have that basic standard that's needed in terms of skills for the company.
Yeah. I would add though, I do think there is a case of groupthink that happens in companies where everybody comes from the same couple business schools. There's too high a standard on maybe someone going to an elite school. Where, you could have a brilliant person who doesn't have the same formal education. Like, I have a friend who's really, really good at IT, and he did not go to university, And then there's also the opposite problem. Then you also have people who have startups and go like, I didn't learn anything in college. I just, I just started coding, So you also have that, right? So, I mean, it's a mix. But, I mean, I think diversity, and tell me I'm wrong, but I think part of it is also people with different educational backgrounds or who grew up in different neighborhoods and social classes. no matter how racially diverse, aren't as easy to measure.
Yeah, so that's again back to the point I was making, right? Like
Yes.
in terms of non-tangible things that you can't see about people. So that study says that if in a group you have people who are maybe not like, tangibly as diverse, like visible factors of diversity, but are very diverse in their views and how they think about things, that group ends up taking like better business decisions.
Yes.
Yes. So it's not necessary that if on paper you have people from X number of nationalities, gender, blah, 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 they will always end up taking diverse decisions. I mean, I know this is a very controversial view that I'm giving right now.
Go for it, though. It makes sense.
Because, I mean, there is also statistics which say that, and that's around, I think, I don't know, again, I don't have the percentage with me, but if you have people, you definitely need like one member from, like if you're entering a particular geography as a company, you definitely need in the sales team one person from that nationality before taking those decisions.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
I mean, I think the other thing in what you're saying that I think is valuable too is I don't think that you're saying that racial and gender diversity is not important, but that, having a shallow quota is not a solution in itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think, I mean, obviously people talk about diversity in a lot of ways because there are groups of people who have historically had far fewer opportunities, and that does have an impact on how they're perceived, right? And that is something that people should strive to fix, but it's also fair to say that, color is more visible than social classes, is more visible than personality, is more visible than, soft skills, transferable skills, things like this. And, but I think this is also the source of why so many companies can be cynical about diversity too. It's not just the shallow view, but they go, wow, there's so many things I must consider, and I have to take a long view on this. And, I think many companies, I'm sure there's some people that say like, hey, like, ideally I'm selling this company by Christmas, and that's my goal, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to create the great working environment. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing on that front, but I mean, I think it's a massive challenge. And I think it's also interesting to hear from you that, as a person of color, people just assume you have a unique desire to talk about diversity during a completely different workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like most of the speaking opportunities that came to me last year, and I think there was a point where I had to start saying no to it because I'm still a business person, I still help businesses I help your business taking better decisions on the basis of like your company culture, communication, and soft skill, not because I'm a diversity speaker or I can speak on diversity. Like, it's just a subset.
So did you really feel like some people were approaching you just because like to have like the Indian girl talk about diversity? Is that a thing that happened?
I mean, I think, I don't know. But there was a point where I felt that this is something that is not, like, it's a subset of what I do. It's not the main thing I do. I mean, I love talking about it. Why not? I mean, it's a sensitive topic, and I feel, but you don't want to do it when you feel that you're given this opportunity because of how you look.
Yeah, and that's a thing about, people's prejudices, right? Is, sometimes they're not so clear. You just go like, why is this person emphasizing the diversity point so much when my workshop is about company culture more broadly?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you spend a lot of time working in journalism, getting that niche of business journalism, coming to appreciate a lot of things about the pace and the honesty. And then when you started doing business journalism, you also developed this deep interest in company culture, and you now use your observations of what's affected other companies to encourage people who work at startups, particularly in Berlin, to share their views, to participate in things that help bring some flatness to the hierarchy and some accessibility between decision makers and people doing other work. And so I'm curious, just besides having an interest, what's your motivation to make a work environment better for someone you don't know?
I think I was very close. Okay, so
Like, why do you care? I mean,
this is leading to a lot of things that ideally I shouldn't be talking about. But yeah, I think
ideally,
ideally I shouldn't be talking about. But it does come from a space where I think I have had the opportunity to actually work with the best leaders in terms of how they treated organizations.
Okay.
And then also have the opportunity to work with some people who didn't know anything about it. And people were, and I could see how unhappy employees were, some of my coworkers. And then I realized, okay, this is a serious problem. Like sometimes, like how if burnout never happens to you, you don't realize like it's a real thing.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, for an Indian, I never knew that like winter depression is a thing. So I mean,
you have to come to the Nordics or come to Germany, experience that winter depression.
So for me, like I had no idea that company culture that can actually affect people in such a bad way as it was affecting certain people that I knew in my life or I knew in some companies that I worked for. And I realized, okay, this is something I've done in the past and something I understand deeply, and people skills come naturally to me.
And you've seen good leadership. Like you said, you've seen what good leadership looks like.
Absolutely, yes.
So then, I mean, it makes sense that if you know what that looks like, you definitely notice when it's not there.
Yes. So I've seen the both sides, and that was my motivation, and I was close to being a victim of it, and I was like, okay, this is something I really need to address, because like a crazy CEO can. Yeah. Like, okay, that's not the right way to say it, but like,
a crazy anybody can be problematic.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you if leaders have an obligation to their people and their organization to hear them out and do things, what obligations do people on the other side have? What obligations does an employee have to leadership? What do mid-level people have, as an obligation to like people above them and below them?
I think honesty.
Okay.
Honesty at all levels. Honesty in terms of, I know these are very difficult conversations. Employees always want to keep their bosses happy and say, yes, oh my God, you're doing great work. And, like in terms of we are with you. And even when in your heart, because, you're doing that work every day and that if this was done differently, it would have better results. So, in terms of honesty, to always keep your views, honesty in terms of your own goals, honesty in terms of how you look, at your role in the organization. I think that's an accountability which is super tough.
Yeah.
But very important. And I have had the opportunity to have it with some bosses. And when I couldn't have it, I realized that, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. I mean, I think we actually as a company had a retrospective today. We have them every couple of weeks, and it's a thing I like about being here is that and it's not like everything's happy, and it's not like everything's always resolved in 10 minutes. But when it's done, it normally feels good. Like I mean, maybe even cathartic, right? Because you get to you have the relief of knowing at least where everybody feels like they stand, and
absolutely.
And I think that feeling is kind of priceless, because I think it's often the case that there's a stereotype that if everything doesn't get resolved, it's somehow a failure. But I think it's almost more important to extinguish growing paranoia of not knowing how other people are feeling about things, and that's something that it takes time, it takes resources, but it takes a lot more resources if someone expresses they're unhappy about something that's built up over a longer period of time, right?
Conflict is very healthy.
Conflict is healthy.
Yes, absolutely. I think so. Even in my workshops, I mean, if there's no conflict, I feel that it's gone bad, It's gone bad if there's no conflict? Absolutely.
You look for the tension?
Yes.
Do you ever scare it up to bring some more energy to it?
No, I haven't done that. I mean, I haven't, there was like,
no fuses to light?
I didn't have to try. I didn't have to try.
Okay.
So, yeah.
No worries. I didn't have to try that as a telling point.
It was already there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent though. I mean, I don't know. That's good. What about, I don't know. Do you, A lot of people don't like conflict, though. I mean, good people who have voices that want to be heard, they're afraid of conflict because they're afraid of the stress of the honesty. I mean, like what do you say to someone who's what do you think if there's a workshop? Has this ever happened where people are getting into it, it's going well, but there's some shy people in the corner who are still just not sure what they want to say, and they're still waiting to see how it plays out? Do you observe that?
Definitely, yes.
Do you try and like bring them in?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, that's the very basic rule. Everybody has to speak.
Everybody's got to speak? Everybody
has to speak. We don't start unless everybody speaks.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no point of me speaking. I told you, like, I'm not going to give any solutions. Like, it's all coming from you because no consultant knows the company better than the employees.
Nor should they pretend to, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I mean, and then as a facilitator, what is the biggest challenge once everyone started voicing their opinion? Like, what do you do with that? Like, I mean, how do you know? What if you do your workshop and then everyone has this great cathartic day, but then it's business as usual after Diksha is gone?
Well, I think that is a challenge. Definitely. How do I manage conflict? Is that your question?
Or but how do you feel when you're done with the workshop? Like, maybe is the better way. Do you have hope that they're going to continue with what they've learned, or do you sometimes get the vibe that some are more successful than others?
Yeah, I mean, you can usually make that out.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, that why the company's into it.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean but with some organizations, beforehand, because it's going to be a long relationship, they're going to come back to you after 3 months, and they really have a long-term plan. With some, they want to try for the first time and then see how it goes. And for some workshops, the very purpose, like if it's a team building workshop, its purpose is only one day.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, of course, it's going to follow up the next coming few days, but we are not really coming to a business decision in that workshop. So, I mean, it's less of long-term engagement, but with some workshops, that there's a goal that has to be achieved after that. So, yes, that's a challenge, but I think I've been lucky with most companies. They've been in touch after the first workshop, and we've, continued to have conversations around it. There's always a post-workshop analysis. There is always feedback coming from both sides, and there have been follow-up workshops as well. So, but I do hear from co-facilitators that it's always a challenge to measure how it goes in long-term engagements.
Yeah. How do you feel when the workshop has gone really well and you've got a feeling that people are very grateful and very, very ready for change? How does that make you feel without hearing what they actually say? How do you get satisfaction from it? Yeah,
I think that's, how do I get satisfaction?
I don't mean that superficially, but I mean, what are you truly most happy about when the workshop goes well?
I think if some people really asked difficult questions, that makes me very happy. Like, I think in one organization, one of the employees actually ended up asking, when his boss was sitting next to him, that what do you do when you feel that your senior is taking a wrong decision, and you really feel that? Now, that's a brave thing to say.
That is gutsy. Yeah.
And it came after an exercise that we had just done before, and he was actually referring to the exercise, that he felt that when they were teaming up together in this, his boss, who was his teammate in this particular exercise, was taking a wrong decision. But we also knew that this comes up with a lot of context. So, I mean, that makes me feel like, wow. And at times you do see people saying some very candid things about when they don't understand cultures, there was one intercultural workshop when I was Indian, okay, so I was taking this workshop, and one of the people, one of the persons asked me that, oh, why do I feel like Indians are so, they never say the truth, they never say, but that's a very...
Really? I've never...
Yeah, no, but
you're Indian and you seem like you're telling the truth quite often.
Yeah, but that comes from a very innocent place, Jesse. You need to realize, like, I mean, maybe he dealt with certain people in the organization that he felt that, okay, it's also, it goes to a cultural graph. In communication, they teach you that Indians are very high context communicators and people in the Nordics are very low context communicators. So you will definitely find Indian people saying things, he didn't mean to say like truth, but like, you will never get very direct answers in terms of yes or no from an Indian. So if you ask me, do you want to have tea? Like, or do you want to have coffee? Like, it's seldom that an Indian person will say yes or no in the first instance,
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll be like, okay, if you are having coffee, I'll have it too. Or if, I'll give you some context.
So there's an etiquette that's a certain norm.
Different. But if you ask, like, it's usually not very, like, binary. Or what do you want to eat for lunch,
Yeah.
No, I mean, as a facilitator, that's my first rule, because, like, everything has a context. Everything. Because the biggest problem is that people are judged all the time.
People are judged all the time.
All the freaking time.
Inside work, outside work.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
What would you, we got to wrap this up soon, but I do want to ask a question for you, going out. What do you think, when it's all said and done, when people have been honest, what do you think people in the world should judge each other about less? Because there's a lot of, highlights of people being disgusted and upset and judgmental of different things. What's one thing that people should be more patient about and less judgmental about from your experience?
More patient about and more
less
judgmental about. I don't know. Like, I have to think about this, but
that's fair.
But I think we should generally be more patient with people who are angry in organizations. Is that what I always feel? Like who are short-tempered or who are very,
show patience with anger.
Show patience with anger, totally, yes. Because I think it has a context that you have no idea about.
Yeah, because anger, whether you agree on the route that someone took to get angry, obviously if they're feeling angry, that the anger itself is almost always honest.
Yes. And I think that if one person is patient with that anger, it's like there's always a balance. Less judgmental. I think about mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because bright people make mistakes, not so bright people make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and judging somebody on one mistake is not really good.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what happens in organizations, because everything is very like quick and result driven, and okay, this person can't do this task, I'm not going to give it to X, Y, to them again. No. Like, I just judged you weren't good at it at the first time.
Yeah.
So that is something you need to be a little less judgmental about.
Well, good. On that note, Diksha, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and bringing some insight into how people can judge less, be more patient, and I think as a result be more comfortable being honest. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Jesse.
And that concludes our discussion today with Diksha. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Working Wisely. In the meantime, get your stuff done, go home, and enjoy your life.